went and is now with Wounded Warrior Project, and he's also, besides being a veteran service officer, he's a national service officer for the Wounded Warrior Project. So I've asked him to come and make a presentation to our post on what he has as far as his experiences and background, because he's been through a lot of the different processes with many different types of claims, and he's going to give you background on how, number one, to never discount whether you need a claim or not, okay? See a veteran service officer and share your experiences, because it doesn't matter if it was ages ago, whether World War II, Korea, Vietnam, or the most current post 9/11. There is always a reason to go out and take a look at, do you have everything you need as far as all of what is either ailing you or what have you to file a claim? Because I'll tell you what, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, when it really affects you, that's too late. So I want to turn it over to Lucas. As you have heard him mention, he's a combat medic, did tours both in Afghanistan and Iraq, and also is a recipient of the Purple Heart. So he has, let's just say, some experience within the system, but is currently working in the system and helping veterans.
So
Lucas.
fun.
Yeah, I know, but I just put those in. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. My name is Lucas Bruner. I'm a National Service Officer with the Wounded Warrior Project. I also do a lot of volunteer work, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who I'm working with. Once you're a veteran, we want to assist them. If you're Navy, I'm sorry, I can't help you now. I was Army, so again, kind of my preference there. So my goal today, with me being here, is to really kind of advocate for your benefits. Who here has not filed a VA disability claim? Okay. Has it been because you felt you didn't need it? Does anybody feel that? Like, you feel like you don't need those benefits? Well, let me tell you this, and I don't know if I really need this. When it comes to your benefits, if we don't utilize these benefits, the budget that's determined a year in advance will be reduced. So the only way we're going to continue to grow with these benefits, which includes everything from VA healthcare to VA disability to education, is going to start to continue to reduce. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we continue to support those that are going to continue to serve in the future. And we do that by getting what we deserve based off of our service. And that's my mission in life, is to make sure that everyone here gets the benefits they deserve for the service that they've done in this country. So, all right, without further ado, I will go ahead and get through. My goal, again, with this class is to kind of give you a foundational understanding of what a claim is. Because there's 3 parts to every claim that has to be filed. And those 3 pieces are very, very, very easy to get evidence for. And hopefully today I will give you a better understanding of that, so that way you can file. Who here has created a VA.gov account? Who here uses My Healthy Vet? Okay, if you use My Healthy Vet, you have a VA.gov access as well. So VA.gov is going to be the future for filing for claims. The VA is going to go away from receiving faxes and also paper applications, purely because the intent is to put it through what they call the automated review system. And that's going to be a computer that's going to be processing all of your evidence to determine if there's possible service connection. So, and I'll talk more about that at the end of this, but again, my goal here is to have an interactive class, or event. So if you have questions, raise your hand, let's engage it. There may be a question that somebody else has that they just don't want to ask. So, and again, the goal here is to grow. So, all right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about who is the VA, because as we all know, we hear people say, I hate the VA. And that's like saying I hate the Army, right? I can't say that. I was only in one unit. How can I say the entire Army sucks? So that's the goal there. What is a service-connected disability? The types of claims for service connection, the fundamentals of a claim. We'll talk about the development of the claim, and then we'll go ahead and show some examples, and we'll do questions and answers at the end. I want everybody to come up with some questions now in your mind, so that way when we get to the end, you can go ahead and engage and again find out if there's anything more that I can kind of help elaborate or maybe give you some clarity on. Next. All right, so the Department of Veterans Affairs is 3 different people. All right, the first one that we all know about is the Veterans Benefits Administration. The second is the Veterans Healthcare Administration. That's where we get our care from. And the third is the National Cemeteries, the ones that put us in the ground. So the Veterans Healthcare Administration is pretty much any care that is solely provided by the VA healthcare system. American Lake, the C-Box, which are called clinical community-based outpatient clinics, where you get your care, and also includes the community care program that used to be called the Choice Program. So that is the VHA. And who here thinks VA healthcare is insurance? Good, good. It's not. It's a benefit. So just want to make sure that's where everything. Next. So the Veterans Benefits Administration pretty much manages anything to do with compensation, education, home loans, life insurance, death claims, pension claims. They're the ones that manage all of that money piece. Next. And of course, the next one, of course, is the folks that put us in the ground. These are the ones that manage all of the national cemeteries. Some of the state cemeteries also receive funding from them. They're the ones ultimately that handle all of the crematories and stuff like that. I mean, anything that, again, has to be in life. So you can understand, the VA is 3 people. Yeah?
They still burial at sea option.
They do still have burial at sea, and they also have burial by plane, or cremation out of plane. So if you're airborne or whatnot, take it off. Great question, great question. So what is a service-connected disability? A service-connected disability is an event, illness, or injury that you receive during your service. This is something that has to have been documented. That is something that shows through proof and evidence that there's a connection between what you have now and what you had back then. And again, we'll talk more about that piece here. Next slide. All right, so it's very important to understand what kind of service connection you're trying to apply for. There are 4 types. There's direct service connection, there's secondary service connection, there's presumptive service connection, and then there's exacerbation, which would be a pre-existing condition before you join service. So direct service connections means that there's objectionable evidence that supports the injury, diagnosis, or treatment happened during service, during active duty period. Reserves and National Guard time does not count unless it was on Title 10 or if it was supported by what they call a line of duty investigation, an LOD. All right, so a good example of direct service connection is rolled an ankle during a road march, was seen by the medic, and had x-rays noting there was an X condition, whether it be fracture, strain, sprain, whatever the case is. That's a good example of a service-connected disability. Potential threat is because it was done in service. A bad example would be rolled ankle during a road march, reported to the medic, but did not go to the A station to get x-rays. Was just given light duty, which light duty means drink water, change your socks, and take a regular can. That's pretty much what light duty. Secondary service connection is a physical or psychological problem that is worsened by a service-connected disability. Who here has lower back issues? Everybody, right? All right. You ever have numbness and tingling shoot down your butt and your toes? That's called radiculopathy or sciatica. That is a great example of secondary service connection. Another example of that would be, does anybody have diabetes? And neuropathy, right? Neuropathy is a great secondary condition to diabetes. And it doesn't necessarily have to happen in service. It just has to be related to that direct service condition. That's it. So a good example, beside a radiculopathy like we talked about, a bad example, because you can go on Google and you can Google anything. I think this is related to this. I think my tinnitus causes me to have lower back pain. That doesn't sound right, but okay, because you can Google anything. So migraines caused by PTSD with no direct nexus from a clinician. So again, we can Google anything, and I can go on the medical websites and find a lot of correlations between things, but you're not going to get somebody that's going to say this is related to this. It's just going to talk about percentages. So again, there has to be a nexus. A nexus is something that says this is more than likely related to this. That has to be, it doesn't matter what we say. Like, oh, I'm pretty sure this is related to that. Well, you're not a doctor, you're also not a specialist. That's the big thing. Your statement is only worth about 30% of what they need for a claim. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, presumptive service connection. How many Vietnam or Saudi veterans do we have in there? Okay, so presumptive, this is going to be your wheelhouse. This means there's a presumption due to exposure to contaminated item or a presumptive location like Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, 10 nautical miles from the landmass of Vietnam, X, Y, all that stuff. And this ultimately means that you were proven to be in that location, and because you're in that location, Congress has dictated a certain amount of presumptive conditions under what they call 38 CFR 3.17. 3.17 talks about what those conditions are, whether they're based off of medically unexplainable or they're going to specifically give the conditions. The Wounded Warrior Project was a really big advocate of the PACT Act. Heath Robinson promising our, it's a big dog name, act, long story short. And what that ultimately did was it gave, instead of the 4 conditions that it was before, it's 35 now. And out of those 35 conditions, a lot of them are cancers. So a lot of our brothers and sisters are dying of things. Out of my 144 cases that I have right now, I have 16 active cancers that were in locations that I serve myself. And that's another big thing for our vets, is they want to make sure, if I pass away tomorrow from something, am I going to be able to get those death benefits? And that's where the presumptive comes into play. Presumptive can also be related to your MOS. Do we have any new people here? Or radiation? Anybody serve in any capacity of radiation? Okay. So I know we have a chemo officer here, so he was around a lot of that stuff. He was the one that was, poisoning us every time we went to the field. So that's also another piece. The other piece with that too is your MOS, your job. So if you were a mechanic and you were around hydraulic fluid, JP4 or JP8, whatever the case is, there's a high likeliness that you have connection with that contaminant. The VA now does what's called a toxic exposure. It's called a TERA ultimately. And what it does is they look at your MOS and look at the likeliness of what chemicals you may have been exposed to, and if there was a chance that later on you could develop something. So that is another presumption that the PACT Act passed. And the great thing about the PACT Act is that it's a progressive bill, which means it's going to continue to grow along with the burn pit registry or the Vietnam, the Agent Orange registry. Those are culminations of information that VBA takes and determines what they want to do to control and continue to expand. There is talk right now of sleep apnea being a presumptive for the burn pits because of all the chemicals that they were breathing over there. So we do anticipate that hopefully in the next month or next couple months. So that's presumptive. So a good example, served in the landmass of Vietnam, had a clinical diagnosis of diabetes and or any condition that's related to 3.17. Bad example would be a claim condition due to a chemical that a veteran was exposed to during their service. Long story short, generally when you're exposed to a chemical, you're going to start having symptoms immediately. It's not going to happen 30 years later. So that's the big piece of a lot of this. The regulation used to state that the condition has to have developed to at least 10% manifestation within the first year. How do you determine 10% manifestation on something? It's either you do or you don't have it, right? So that's the big issue. And a lot of you, when you got out of service, you were focused on your health. You're focused on taking care of your family, getting a job, you know, being able to provide for everybody, kids and all that jazz. And so a lot of that issue that we have is that there's not veterans that are continuing to show that condition manifested within a certain degree in 12 months. PACT Act got rid of that. There is no more manifestation for 10% within the first 12 months. Now there just has to be a connection between them. So. All right, so exacerbation of service. Did anybody join with a waiver? Yeah.
So what does documentation for presumptives look like?
So it depends on which type of presumptive. If we're talking like Agent Orange or burn pits, all you have to have is a 214 that says you served in an eminent danger area of that, or some kind of document showing that you were in that location. That's it. The most difficult piece is going to be our Navy nets, because with the Navy, they have to go out and they actually legitimately will take a map and they will draw everywhere that ship went. And as long as that ship was in 10 nautical miles of line, that's Vietnam or whatever the case is, then they'll confirm that. But the issue is, not everybody in the Navy was logging things accurately. So there's a lot of ships that were there, but they weren't there. If that makes sense. So all you need for a presumptive is a clinical diagnosis, a confirmation of an area or a chemical. So if you had a treatment event or an event that happened during your service where you were doused in JP8, and after that you continue to have issues with skin, dermatitis or whatever the heck it is, that right there would be a good presumptive. Yeah.
Well, we're talking about the PACT Act. What's the advantage of getting registered in the PACT Act if you're already in the VA system and being treated for medical?
So you say register for the PACT Act?
Well, yeah, I got counselors that are telling me, well, make sure you get in on the PACT Act. Well, I'm already getting treated through the VA. And I was like, I already had the disability coming in. They're not real generous with that. But when they start doing the other things, that's a different story. But they keep saying, make sure you get registered for chemical exposure. Because I'm one of those Navy vets that I spent a lot of time off Iraq, off Iran and Iraq. And I was out there when you guys were burning shit.
Right, track it.
The sand was bad enough with the flies and the damn.
There's a culmination of awesome moments for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So the VHA, the VA healthcare people, they are not the wisest of any benefits. They don't really know the benefits. They just keep harping at people. So that's like you saying, hey, go apply for Agent Orange. That's not something. There's a list of conditions related to Agent Orange or burn pits. So they're just talking about the burn pit registry, which again is a culmination of information that will help, you know, continue to grow the PACT Act. So that's the benefit there. But I can tell you this: if you served in Vietnam or Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, or all those other places, Saudi, Kosovo, stuff like that, you're already marked in the VA's disability system, in the VBMS system, as a PACT Act veteran. So right now I'm working with about 30 folks getting out that have served in Iraq. Before we even file a claim, there's a memorandum in there called the 1117 and the 1119 memorandum, and it says that you've been exposed to XYZ because you were in this location. That's happening. That's what the PACT Act did. So there's really nothing you need to do.
That's what I was telling us. It just seems kind of ludicrous for me to try to go over here.
Yeah.
And then you got the MVP out there, which is the Million Measures Program, which is doing a registry and blood draw for DNA.
MVP, though, is for everything, your life in general. It doesn't have any relation to the burn pits. That's the difference between MVP and the registry. So, but at the end of the day, the only way we're going to grow the registry and those presumptive conditions is to use the registry. So, and you just do it once. You go and you do a screening with the environmental clinic, and then they determine if there's a likeliness that you could have been exposed to something, and that's as far as it goes. As far as it goes. They don't put nexuses, they don't help you do anything. They just say, well, you're a mechanic, there's a good chance you're around fuel and oil.
Yeah, the healthcare administration doesn't help you with any of that at all.
No, they
you have
don't.
to piece it together, and you need your own independent medical.
Oh yeah, trust me, as a VSO, we deal with that all the time. Especially if you're a veteran that doesn't have private insurance, you're screwed because there's nothing you can do to help unless you want to pay out of pocket. Which, if your only income is your VA disability, that's very difficult.
Well, now I have to pay it out of pocket, so that I can have TRICARE.
You You may, but the other folks may not, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Especially if you're only 20%, that means you're paying co-pays at the VA as well. So, for medications, so.
Okay.
Yeah. So, exacerbation of service, did anybody come in with a waiver? Because you had some kind of injury. I had a waiver when I came in, but it wasn't for musculoskeletal stuff, it was for something else. So exacerbation ultimately means that you had an injury, you broke your ankle when you were 16, you joined the Army when you were 18, and while you're in service, something happens and that ankle injury is worsened. So that is what they call an exacerbation. So it's something that was worsened past its normal progression ultimately. Because generally with surgery or with casting, the goal is that you're going to heal up. So when you join, there's this thing called presumption of soundness, which means that you are ready, fit to fight, as they used to call it. So with exacerbation, we just have to show that, hey, there's a high likeliness that if I had an injury when I was 16 and it healed, I never should have problems again. But I jumped out of a perfectly good airplane, and during that event, I rolled my ankle again, and then I had to have surgery during service. That right there would be a perfect example of exacerbation from service. So a good example, fractured shoulder at, as a teenager, joined with, I can't even read that, I don't wear glasses. Joined with no issues, but had to have surgery during service for the same shoulder. Again, same thing I just talked about with the ankle. A bad example of that would be you had shoulder surgery before service, and you joined and you continue to have pain. Well, pain doesn't dictate anything. Pain just dictates that you still have a condition, but it doesn't prove that your service has made it worse. So there has to be objectionable evidence, which usually will require imaging and or specialized treatment, orthopedics, whatever the case is. All right, so now we're going to talk about the fundamentals of service connection. This is how you get your disabilities. This is what the VA is going to be looking at. They look at 3 laws, 38 CFR 3.303, 304, and 307. Those are the 3 laws that dictates everything the VA is doing when they're developing your claim. So the first part is, when we were going to talk about this, is an event, injury, or illness that was treated during your active duty service or approved through an LOD, some kind of injury. The second displays persistence and chronicity. So I injured my ankle, continued to have problems throughout my service with it, and it was noted through some kind of treatment or annual reports, whatever the case is. And the third one, which is the most important part, is there has to be objectionable loss of function. That means that I rolled my ankle, I'm continuing to have pain, but I'm still able to run, I'm still able to march, I'm still able to jump, I'm still able to do all that. That does not show that there's loss of function. The VA does not compensate for things that don't have loss of function. Because again, it's called compensation, which means you're trying to offset for a loss of something. Yeah. So, a good example of the direct service connection, or excuse me, the first part of it is treated for a shoulder injury during service. Oh my gosh. MRI, shoulder impingement. That is a good example of a direct service connection. Bad example will be rolled ankle during field exercise, but was never seen for it, which is going to be 98% of us here, right? So our goal was to, get back to the mission. If you were a leader, you wanted to make sure that the troops were taken care of. If you were an officer, you were never going to go sick call because you were looked at as weak. And I think all of us had that kind of fear as well. So that's a big thing that we deal with. Next. All right, displays persistence and chronicity. I'm not going to read that because I'm pretty sure I'm going blind. But I will say that, just like we talked about, I had an MRI in service of a shoulder impingement issue. After that, I had to go to physical therapy. I had to get injections once a year. I had to do whatever it is. It's showing that that problem has continuously maintained itself. That is going to be important. I rolled my ankle in 2014 in basic training, and I'm retiring this year, or getting out this year, and I've never been seen for it since. That is a horrible claim. That's 98% of the claims that I process. Purely because we don't want to be seen for it, we don't want to be looked at as weak, all of the above. Bad example, I think I just said a bad example. That one. I rolled my ankle in basic training 2014 and haven't been seen for it since. So, has to maintain those 3 things. Next. Sorry. Displays the loss of function. I think we talked about that. What can't you do because of it? Now, pain is subjective. I can't see your level of pain. I can't see your level of pain. So the only way to show your level of pain is through loss of function. So if that pain is so bad that you're incapacitated, like my back locks up, I'm done, I'm toast for the day, that is loss of function. It doesn't necessarily indicate that you can't do something, but it shows a period of loss of function. That's one of those things that has to show some kind of loss of function. What can't you do because of that condition? And is it measurable? Is it objectionable? Whatever the case is. Range of motion is a big one. Any musculoskeletal condition is evaluated off of your range of motion. Back, they do flexion, they do extension, they do toward left, toward right, any of that stuff. Outside of those range of motions, they measure you. If you are not outside of the normal, then you're going to get 0%. That's just it. Pain itself can be awarded at 10%, but again, you got to show loss of function in order to hit that 10%, which means it's compensable at that point. They have to pay you because you lost something, some kind of whatever the case is. All right, so now the important piece. How do I prepare to file my claim? That is the big takeaway here. How do I apply for my disability benefits and get those benefits that I deserve based off my service? So, VHA, I think the gentleman that stood up at the back had said that the VA healthcare will not help you as far as creating nexus letters. So we talked about the three things we need: an event, injury, or diagnosis during service, a persistent and loss of function, and it's at time of application. There have to be those two things: persistence and loss of function. So, how do you determine an injury that happened 52 years ago and correlate it with your current diagnosis? That is going to be where you work the nexus piece. The nexus is very, very difficult. The common terminology for a nexus is more than likely related to service. We need a clinician, a doc, not a PA, because PA or a nurse. We actually need an MD to say that that condition is more than likely related to this, and then it has to be justified. VA Healthcare will not do that. Their director at Seattle for the Washington visit has already put out a memorandum that he does not want his doctors to do that because it's a conflict of interest. I don't agree. I don't agree with that, but I can't really do too much on it. So what we have to usually do is recommend the folks go on the outside to a civilian provider or pay out of pocket. If you want your benefits, you're going to have to fight for them. You're not going to just be given to us. So just remember that VA is not going to be there for us. Now, I have seen a couple nexus letters come from American Lake, but they were garbage. It was like they were just doing DMV paperwork. That is more than likely related to that because I said so. It's like, that doesn't do anything to help anybody out. Lay statements. How many people here have heard the power of lay statements? Okay. Well, they can help. They can. The only issue with lay statements, though, is that lay statements are not definitive because, so let's use a specific example of Vietnam era. So 1976, I got out of basic training. I went to my first unit here on Fort Lewis. I was stationed on North Fort at the World War II barracks. And during that time, I slept on a bed that had a coil that came out and stuck me in the back. And I've been having issues with it. I was never seen for it, but the people that I served with, they remember because I was waking up in the middle of the night cussing about this thing that was sticking me in the back. That is great, but that does not necessarily support what the diagnosis was back then. That's the problem. And that's where I say the lay statement's only about 30% of what you need for a claim. Now, going back to the three fundamentals: an event, injury, or diagnosis in service, a confirmed diagnosis at time of application, and a nexus between the two of those, you have met the first one, which was the event, injury, or diagnosis in service. That is what a lay statement can help with. The other piece is battle run statements. If you were married at the time and your spouse remembers that injury, those are going to help with that very important piece. And a lot of us, like I said, I'm sure that a lot of you did not get seen during your service. This would be a way to fill that void. The second part of that would be a confirmed diagnosis of excuse my language, aspanitis or whatever they give you for that coil that came and went in your back. And then of course the third one, which we just talked about, which is the nexus. You know, how does that condition 52 years later relate to that one that happened during service? Lay statements can't help. All right, so Google is not your friend. I think we talked about that. You can Google anything. I legitimately get cases all the time. Like, hey, I went on Reddit. When I say Reddit, I literally just turn off. My brain just turned off. Because you can go on Reddit and find crazy stuff. I heard a story last week where a veteran was adamant that anybody with 100% service-connected disability would get a free house. And he was adamant. He's like, look, no, I read it. My girlfriend read it. You know, it sounds legit. I'm like, yeah, it sounds legit versus is legit? It's two different things, you know? Somebody's trying to sell you some magical medicine is what they're trying to do. So again, vet any information you have. Go through somebody that's reputable. National Institute of Health is a great one for supporting documentation. And another line is VA.gov. VA.gov has literally everything. The new director of the VA has done a really good job expanding VA.gov as far as information. And you can also apply online. And we'll talk more about that at the end of this. Next. All right, so I'm going to get in depth and we're going to do a lot of scenario-based things because I think that's going to be the best thing that we can learn from. So, if you served during a time and you had an injury, say 2014 to 2018, you injured some kind of part of your body or had a diagnosis, PTSD, tinnitus, heart disease, hypertension, sleep apnea, whatever the case is, and you're trying to apply for benefits. Just remember that everything has to go back to your service. Everything has to go back. Here's how I do it. So for any of you Vietnam era, or any folks that served before 2001, you have a difficulty time of determining the time frame from when you served to now. So how you do this is you do your story. Your story is going to be the most important piece. I had a veteran that served in World War II, got injured, they were on a tank and they got blown up or something like that, rolled over, hurt their knee and their ankle, and the VA kept denying it because there was no treatment record for it. We finally were able to get a lay statement. The most important piece, though, was the story. We talked about that. You know, I served in World War II, and during this time, you know, I was on this tank, and you know, it got blown up, and I got rolled over, and I rolled on my knee and my ankle. And this was, again, I think when I did this claim, it was 2021. That's a long time. And that's over 70 years that we had to prove that something had happened, right? His story was what the judge took as evidence. He hadn't necessarily been seen for it, because how do we prove that they had treatment records back in the 1950s? They didn't. You went to your local town provider that you've been seeing since you were 6 years old, got treatment there, and that made, you know, that stayed there at that facility. Hopefully he stayed around when you did your claim, but, you know, that's the big piece there, is there was no persistence. But where there's lack of persistence, your statement is going to be valid with that. Those statements cannot be, they have to be objectionable. No I feels, no I likes, no they did. None of that. It needs to be what happened. I served in the United States Army from 2004 to 2016 as a combat medic. During my service, I injured my blood. I was not seen for it during service. When I got out, I had problems with it, but I didn't have access to VA health care until 2021, 2022. And now I'm treated for it. That right there has been all three parts of the claim. Event, injury, or diagnosis in service, persistence, the nexus to my service, and a confirmed loss of function at time of application. Okay? So lay statements are going to be your guide. Everybody who does a claim with me, unless they're active duty, I always have them do a story, because it's going to help determine the correlation to your service. Because these VSRs and these RVSRs that do the rating and stuff, they literally have 18 minutes to look at your case, to look at your claim. And if you don't lay it out, just like a story for them, they're not going to feel that heart tug of like, I don't see how this connects to the service. So, questions on that? Okay. The next step we're going to do, if we don't have any questions, is we're going to talk about VA.gov. So, I think we had talked about VA.gov and how you all had applied for it. It's a pain in the butt to get on it because you have to go create what they call an ID-me. ID-me means you have to remember your last 5 houses, your last 3 bank accounts, your girlfriend when you were 7, stuff like that. Any question that you've ever reported will pop up there. And if you don't know those questions, it will bar you, it'll stop you from going forward, and then you have to do a phone security interview with VA to determine, yes, this is me. ID-me is going to be the future. So I highly recommend everybody go on VA.gov, set yourself up for an ID-me account. Feel free to curse a lot because you're going to get on it. But once you get into it, it's going to really, really help you. Especially when it comes to My Healthy Vet, which is how you talk to your doctors. Because obviously we don't know, there's no phone number we can call our VA doctor. It's just, I got to call the scheduling line and hopefully they have an appointment. The other way that we can get around that is through My Healthy Vet. Once you have that ID-me account, it makes you a level 2, and then you can message your doc and see results and all that good stuff. So you go on VA.gov. You can do everything on VA.gov as far as filing a claim. You can file an initial claim, which means you've never filed before. You can file a supplemental claim, which means you're adding to or adding a new condition. You can also do appeals. You can also do an appeal to the Board of Veterans Affairs. Everything is on VA.gov now. And it will walk you through that process. We do have an instructional email or a class that we can send out to everyone if you're interested. And it walks you through step by step on how to apply for a disability on VA.gov. Just so you all know, your VA file number is your social. VA has not gotten smart like Social Security yet, as far as your Medicare, as far as changing that yet. So, that's really about it. Big thing, of course, with any VA claim is the VA can gather records from themselves. The VA can gather records from VHA, but they do not have a duty to assist you in gathering records on the outside. That is up to you. They will do 3 requests if you do a medical release. They will try 3 times to get those records from that civilian provider. But I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of providers will actually charge you for your own records. VA does not pay for records. So if there is a pay agreement, they will just stop and they will not get those records, which means you need to do that. And last time I checked, I think they were charging 15 cents per page. So if you're talking 2-3 years of treatment, it's going to be a hot amount of money. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get a claim out of it. So just things to be aware of. ID-me is going to be the future. VA.gov, you can do everything on there, change your direct deposit information, your address, all that stuff. And you want to make sure that you're doing that. Who here is over 30% and has dependents? That's you, sir. You're over 30% disabled and you have dependents, right?
Well, they're not dependents, they're fully
You're married. What's your spouse?
dependent.
Gotcha. So,
I do.
if you have over 30% disability and you have dependents, every 5 years you are required to report that there's a change or no change. If you do not respond to that letter, the VA will say you applied for your disability benefits in 2001 and they've been paying you for the last 23 years for those dependents. If you do not respond to that letter saying no change, the VA can go all the way back to 2001 and you'll owe them all that money. I had a veteran that they went back to 1987 and they said that he owed the VA $58,000. He was married the entire time. It was just purely because he didn't respond because he was overseas. So again, whatever you do, keep your address up to date on VA.gov, or you can call the VA 1-800 number. You can do it there because you want to make sure that that information is not lost, which could also lead to you guys losing your benefits. So,
Thank you very much. I want to make sure you make the 1110.
any questions?
Otherwise, you're going to own a piece of property out here.
Sure. What you got?
That email with the instructions, how are we gonna get that?
Okay. Jim has it in his email. I know that VA.gov too, if you go to it, the how-tos, it will walk you through it. It's fairly easy, fairly easy.
And I can help you with that, because besides getting in initially, like he said, ID-me and all that, once you get in, just go in initially, and then it'll generate a letter of intent. And then start your clock on your claim, you have 1 year to develop your claim. Okay, like he was talking about, sending letters out to your private doctors and stuff like that to send in and all that. So it gives you 1 year time. Now, if you're fortunate enough to get awarded a claim, they will back pay you to that date of that letter of intent.
And if you got, say you get awarded 90%, 12 months at 90% is roughly about $2,500 a month. It's a hot amount of money, and it's all tax-free. So, that's great. Any last minute questions?
Well, we have a little presentation if you want to come up here. So we also have a certificate of appreciation for Lucas coming this morning and making the presentation. And this says, Lucas, for your presentation on the Veterans Affairs Claim System and your many years of supporting our veterans as the previous Assistant Department Service Officer and Training Officer for the 150 American Legion posts in the state of Washington. Your dedication exemplifies the core values of the American Legion, and we're proud and honored that you continue to support our veterans.